Assalamualaikum and welcome to Baby Step Med, where I try and make difficult medical concepts a bit easier to understand. Please like and subscribe. Okay, let's see. The liver. It's really easy, just like follow through. Okay, so let's start off. The distal end of the foregut's endodermal lining gets an outgrowth, which we call the liver bud. It has rapidly proliferating cells that penetrate the septum transversum. And the liver cord's epithelial cells intermingle with the vitelline and umbilical veins, and they form hepatic sinusoids. When all of the cells have penetrated the septum transversum, the organ bulges into the abdominal cavity, and the mesoderm of the septum transversum becomes membranous. Okay, and which forms the lesser omentum and the falciform ligament. The surface of the liver that remains in contact with the future diaphragm forms the bare area of the liver. It starts producing bile by the 12th week. Now let's move on to this. The liver bud. This is how the liver is formed, right? But the liver bud also goes through this. A connection between this bud and the foregut narrows, right? And this forms the bile duct, which gets a ventral outgrowth, which forms the gallbladder and the cystic duct. That is it. We also have a few anomalies, of course, so let's get into them. Number one is your accessory hepatic ducts. You have the formation of accessory hepatic ducts. You have gallbladder duplication. You have extrahepatic biliary atresia, so the ducts don't recanalize. You have intrahepatic biliary atresia, so this leads to fetal infections, and we have variations in liver lobulation. Now let's move on to the pancreas. So the pancreas, the endodermal lining of the duodenum gives off a ventral bud and a dorsal bud. The ventral bud moves dorsally when the duodenum rotates, so it now lies below and behind the dorsal bud. Later, the parenchyma and the duct systems of the two buds, they fuse, right? Okay, and now we have a picture of the pancreas. This is the head, this is the unsnared process, this is the neck, this is the body, and this is the tail. So the ventral bud forms the head and the unsnared process, so the orange part, and the dorsal bud forms the rest of the pancreas. As you can see, right? And this is how the organ is formed. Now we move on to the formation of the main pancreatic duct, which enters the duodenum via the major papilla. It has a ventral pancreatic duct and the distal part of the dorsal pancreatic duct. So if the proximal part remains, you have the formation of the accessory pancreatic duct, which is also known as the duct of Santorini, and this enters the duodenum via the minor papilla. Okay, so we formed the organ, we formed the main pancreatic duct. Now we have the formation of the islets of Langerhans, which form in the 3rd month from the pancreatic tissue, and insulin secretion starts at about the 5th month. Now the anomalies, the number one being the annular pancreas, which is kind of like a ring. So the right portion of the ventral bud migrates dorsally, right, but the left portion migrates on the opposite direction. So the duodenum is surrounded by pancreatic tissue and an annular pancreas is formed. It can constrict it, which leads to obstruction. And then we have accessory pancreatic tissue, which can be anywhere from the end of the esophagus to the primary intestinal loop. It is most commonly in stomach mucosa and Meckel's diverticulum. So as you can see, the pancreas involves 4 things. You have the formation of the organ from the ventral and dorsal bud. Then you have the formation of the main pancreatic duct, which has 2 parts. It has a ventral part and a distal part. And then you have islets of Langerhans, and then you have insulin secretion. that is it. Thank you for watching, and remember to pray for everyone in distress and in need, and thank you. Bye.